The world is full of biases. Ironically, one of the ones the woke crowds can't see is their own, namely confirmation bias. In our last video, we discussed lived experience and why it alone cannot determine truth. So if you haven't watched that one, you might want to go back and do so, because today's video will piggyback off that. We are going to delve into how much like religion, woke ideology is susceptible to one of the mind's greatest tricks, confirmation bias. Before we do, if you like content like this, hit that like and subscribe button, and let's get started. In my last video, I showed that lived experience isn't justification for truth, but can we go one step further and say there is good reason to think these claims are dubious? I contend that confirmation bias is a very good reason for this. Okay, let's define the term confirmation bias. So Britannica defines confirmation bias as people's tendency to process information by looking for, or interpreting, information that is consistent with their existing beliefs. Now let's look at some areas the woke atheist will certainly agree on in the topic of religion. Starting with prayer, we see many religious people believe in the power of prayer. We all know these people look at examples where they claim it did work and ignore the ones it didn't. They may write it off as, God works in mysterious ways, or God said no. They want to find that prayer works, so they find ways to justify it, in spite of the fact that actual evidence shows prayer is no better than random chance. Some studies have even had prayer's effectiveness fail to even meet random chance. Another couple quick examples are, personal religious experiences, such as visions or revelations, may be selectively remembered or interpreted in a way that confirms existing beliefs while discounting alternative explanations. Also, it's important to remember that, within religious communities, there may be a tendency for members to conform to the prevailing beliefs and avoid expressing dissenting opinions. This can reinforce confirmation bias within the group. So as atheists, we can all agree that religion clearly shows the human mind is capable of confirming beliefs which are not true, even finding evidence it thinks supports those beliefs. Now this is where the woke atheists of the world fail to stay consistent and see these same tendencies in their beliefs. If a person can find ways to believe prayer works because they've been conditioned to believe that it does, why would we not expect people trained to see the world as oppressed versus oppressor to be finding evidence to fulfill their belief? This, after all, is a very common cognitive trick the brain plays. People conditioned to think they are oppressed will find reasons to accept that belief further. It doesn't help that the media is often out advancing this narrative. For instance, after George Floyd died, the media kept running a statistic on deaths per capita by race. This showed it did disproportionately impact the black community, but it was also a deceptive stat that catered to people looking to confirm racism. Had the media taken a deeper look and showed additional stats, we could have gotten a clearer picture. It turns out that the entirety of this discrepancy, and then some, is accounted for by violent crime in the black community. As a matter of fact, it more than makes up for it based on the statistics. This is not to say black people are inherently prone to violent crime, but it does clearly change the problem from racist cops to how do we solve the problem of crime in the black community. Also, we can look at why police do use deadly force so much. Yet, it is clear by this data that the stat the media used did not actually confirm the racial oppression that was perceived. One also has to wonder how much of this goes into the trans ideology. After all, if you are getting young impressionable minds to think it's a good thing to be trans, it stands to reason those same minds will start to find evidence they are transgender. This could easily play into the recent uptick in people who are claiming to be other genders. To completely rule this out is absurd. Now, I'm not saying there are no true transgender people. As a matter of fact, I acknowledge there are legitimate medical conditions based on this very thing, but the woke community is not doing the world any favors by not even allowing these questions to be asked. Now, I am not saying that racism doesn't exist, or that some people aren't transphobic, but we really need to start considering things like confirmation bias when we discuss lived experiences. Also, I should note I specifically focused on racism and trans issues today, but the same considerations should also be made when considering other woke claims. We need to be able to honestly ask questions and answer them. In my next video, I plan on looking at why truth matters and the devaluation of that concept in the woke atheist movement. So until then, keep fighting the good fight.